Jake Martinez sat in the back corner of the quantum physics classroom, watching the morning sunlight stream through the massive viewing windows of Harmony Point Station. Beyond the glass, stars sparkled like diamonds against the black of space. 3 different colored suns cast their light across the station's outer hull, creating a rainbow effect that never got old. Even after 2 years of living here, the Galactic Academy of Sciences was home to students from 47 different worlds. Jake was one of only 12 humans in the entire school. Most days he felt like everyone was watching him, waiting for him to do something stupid or violent. That was what most aliens expected from humans anyway. Professor Velton clicked his crystalline fingers against the holographic display, showing a complex equation that made Jake's head hurt. The tall Zephorian looked like he was made of living glass, with light flowing through his transparent body in slow waves. His voice sounded like wind chimes when he spoke. Today we will discuss quantum entanglement across galactic distances, Professor Velton announced. Please form your study groups. Jake watched as students quickly moved around the room, joining their friends. The Draconians, with their scaled green skin and sharp teeth, sat together near the front. Behind them, a group of tall, graceful Celestians floated slightly above their chairs, their white robes moving without any wind. The bear-like Gorillians took up most of the left side of the room, their thick fur and massive shoulders making their desks look like toys. Jake noticed that one student didn't move at all. Zixai sat alone in the middle of the room, his forearms folded across his thin chest. The young Calarian looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a person. With large compound eyes that reflected light in strange ways, his pale green skin had a metallic shine, and thin antennae twitched nervously on top of his head. Jake had seen Zixai in several classes over the past semester. The Calarian was smart, maybe the smartest student in their year. His answers were always perfect, and his projects were works of art, but he always sat alone. Looks like the bug doesn't have any friends again, whispered Vrector, a massive Gorillian with dark brown fur and small, mean eyes. His voice was so deep it made the desk vibrate. Maybe we should put him out of his misery. The other Gorillians laughed, showing their sharp teeth. A few students from other species smiled, too, but most just looked away. Nobody wanted to get involved. Jake felt his stomach twist. He knew he should say something, but what could he do? Humans were already seen as troublemakers by most of the galaxy. His people had only joined the Galactic Council 30 years ago, and many older species still thought humans were too violent and unpredictable to trust. Commander Lisa Brooks, the human administrator, had given Jake and the other human students a speech on their first day. "You represent all of humanity here," she had said. "Every choice you make reflects on our entire species. Think before you act." Jake tried to focus on his work, but he kept glancing at Zixai. The Calarian's antennae drooped lower with each passing minute. When Professor Velton asked for volunteers to present their work, several hands shot up, but Zixai didn't raise any of his 4 arms. After class, Jake packed his things slowly, watching as other students filed out. Zixai was the last to leave, moving carefully around the groups of friends talking in the hallway. Jake noticed how the other students stepped aside when Zixai approached, like he had some kind of disease. Jake followed at a distance as Zixai walked toward the laboratory section of the station. The Calarian moved through the halls like a ghost, trying to make himself invisible. It wasn't working. "Hey, bug boy," Fractor's voice boomed down the corridor. The big Gorillian was walking with 3 of his friends, all of them grinning. "Where are you going so fast?" Zixai stopped walking, but didn't turn around. His antennae flattened against his head. "We're talking to you," said another Gorillian, this one with lighter fur and a scar across his nose. "It's rude not to answer." "I am going to the laboratory," Zixai said quietly. His voice had a strange musical quality, like he was humming and speaking at the same time. "I have work to complete." "What kind of work?" Fractor moved closer, using his size to loom over the much smaller Calarian. "Building another useless gadget that nobody cares about?" Jake stopped walking and pressed himself against the wall. He should keep moving, mind his own business. This wasn't his fight. "My project is a quantum resonance device," Zixai said, his voice getting even quieter. It can detect gravitational waves from— Nobody asked for a lecture, Bugvractor interrupted. Your people lost the war, remember? Clarions don't get to act smart anymore? Jake felt anger building in his chest. The war Vractor was talking about had happened 15 years ago, when Zixi was just a baby. The Calarian Confederacy had tried to defend their colonies from Gorelian expansion and lost badly. Now their worlds were under Gorelian protection, which really meant Gorelian control. I just want to finish my project, Zixa said. Maybe we should help you finish it, Vractor said with a nasty smile. Bet we could finish it real quick. The other Gorelians laughed. Jake saw Zeke's whole body start to shake. The Calarian's antennae were pressed so flat against his head they almost disappeared. Jake knew he was about to make a mistake. Commander Brooks would be angry. His parents back on Earth would be worried when they heard about it. The other human. Students might get in trouble because of what he was about to do, but watching Zixi shake with fear, surrounded by students twice his size, Jake realized he didn't care about any of that. He pushed away from the wall and started walking toward the group. Hey, Vractor, Jake called out, his voice echoing down the corridor. Why don't you pick on someone who might actually fight back? All 5 aliens turned to stare at him, Vractor's small eyes narrowed with confusion and anger. This doesn't concern you, human, Vractor growled. Walk away. I don't think I will, Jake said, stopping right next to Zixi. Up close, he could see that the Calarian's compound eyes were reflecting his image dozens of times, like looking into a broken mirror. Jake wasn't particularly big for a human, and he was tiny compared to Vractor. But he planted his feet and crossed his arms, trying to look more confident than he felt. You want to mess with him? Jake said, nodding toward Zixi. You go through me first. The hallway went completely quiet. Other students had stopped to watch, forming a loose circle around them. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Vractor stared down at him for a long moment, then started to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made Jake's bones vibrate. A human wants to fight a Gorelian, Vractor said, loud enough for everyone to hear. This should be entertaining. Jake swallowed hard, wondering what he had just gotten himself into. The crowd of students grew larger as word spread through the station's corridors. Jake could hear whispers in a dozen different languages, but he kept his eyes locked on Vractor's face. The massive Gorelian was still grinning, showing teeth that could probably bite through metal. You sure about this, human? Vractor asked, cracking his knuckles. The sound was like tree branches breaking. Your species might be known for being crazy, but this is stupid even for you. Jake felt Zixi move slightly behind him. Calarian's forearms were trembling, and his antennae kept twitching back and forth. Jake could smell something sweet in the air, which he remembered from xenobiology class was how Calarians smelled when they were scared. I'm sure, Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. But I'm not going to fight you in a hallway where someone might get hurt by accident. Vractor's grin got wider. Oh, you want to make this official? Fine by me. We'll do this the proper way. Jake's stomach dropped. He'd hoped Vractor would back down or at least postpone the fight. Instead, the Gorelian was getting more excited. Ritual. Combat, Vractor announced to the crowd. Academy rules. Human wants to challenge me, so we'll settle this in the arena. A draconian student with bright red scales stepped forward. Jake recognized her as Kashara from his history class. She was always quiet, never caused trouble, but she looked worried now. Vractor. Maybe this is not necessary, she said in her hissing voice. Commander Brooks will not be happy about this. The human challenged me, Vractor said, puffing out his massive chest. Academy law says I can accept. Besides, it'll be over quick. Jake looked around at all the faces staring at him. Some looked excited, others seemed scared, and a few appeared confused. He spotted Nina Campbell, his closest human friend at the academy, pushing through the crowd. Her brown hair was messy from running, and her face was pale. Jake, what are you doing? Nina whispered when she reached him. This is insane. Butcher. Could crush you, I know, Jake said quietly, but I can't just walk away now. Nina grabbed his arm. Yes, you can. Just apologize and walk away. Nobody will think less of you. Jake looked over his shoulder at Zixi. The Calarian was staring at him with those huge compound eyes, and Jake could see his own reflection dozens of times in them. Zixai looked like he couldn't believe someone was actually standing up for him. "I can't," Jake told Nina. "I'm sorry, Professor." Velton arrived just as the crowd was getting really loud. The tall Zephyrian's crystal body was glowing brighter than usual, which Jake knew meant he was angry or stressed. What is happening here?" Professor Velton asked, his wind chime voice cutting through the noise. "The human challenged me to ritual." "Combat," Vector said before Jake could speak. "I accepted. Academy rules say we can fight in the arena with proper supervision." Professor Velton looked at Jake with his glowing eyes. "Is this true, Mr. Martinez?" Jake nodded. "Yes, sir." "This is highly irregular," the professor said. "Perhaps we should involve Commander Brooks, and no need." Vector interrupted. "The rules are clear. We fight, someone wins, it's over. Unless the human wants to back down." All eyes turned to Jake. He could feel the weight of everyone's attention, and he knew this moment would follow him for the rest of his time at the academy. Maybe for the rest of his life. "I don't back down," Jake said. An hour later, Jake stood in the academy's combat arena, wearing the standard protective gear. The arena was a circular room with soft walls and a padded floor, designed for species to settle disputes without killing each other. Above them, a viewing area was packed with students and several professors. Commander Brooks sat in the front row, her face like stone. Jake had never seen her look so angry. Next to her, Principal Corvash waved his tentacles nervously. The Mindari administrator's purple skin was darker than usual, which meant he was stressed. Rector entered the arena from the other side, and Jake felt his confidence drain away. Without his academy uniform, the Gorelian looked even bigger. His dark fur-covered muscles that looked like they could bend steel bars. His claws were retracted, as required by the rules, but Jake could see the tips poking out of his fingertips. "Combat will continue until one participant yields or is unable to continue," announced the referee, a mechanical voice from the arena speakers. "Lethal force is prohibited. Combatants, are you ready?" Bractor nodded and dropped into a fighting stance that looked like he was about to charge. Jake tried to remember everything he had learned in the self-defense classes his parents had made him take back on Earth. "Ready," Jake said, though he didn't feel ready at all. "Begin," the mechanical voice announced. Vector charged immediately, just like Jake thought he would. The Gorelian was fast for something so big, but Jake was faster. "Ah!" He dove to the side. At the last second, and Vrakta crashed into the padded wall. "Stand still and fight!" Vrakta roared, spinning around. "Why would I do that?" Jake asked, backing away and keeping his hands up. "That would be stupid!" Vrakta charged again, and again Jake dodged. This time he managed to land a quick punch to Vrakta's ribs as the Gorelian went past. It was like hitting a brick wall. And Jake's hand immediately started to hurt. It's running away all humans know how to do, as Vrakta taunted, breathing hard. "I'm not running," Jake said, circling to keep the arena between them. "I'm thinking you should try it sometime." The crowd laughed. Jake saw Vraktor's face get even angrier. Good. Angry opponents made mistakes. Vraktor tried a different approach this time, moving more carefully and trying to corner Jake. But every time he got close, Jake slipped away, always talking, always moving. "You know what your problem is?" Jake said as he ducked under a massive swing. "You think being big makes you strong? But strength isn't about size. Then what is it about?" Bractor growled, trying to grab Jake with both hands. Jake jumped backward and grinned. "It's about protecting people who need protection." That's when Jake saw his chance. Richter had overextended himself trying to grab Jake, and he was off balance. Jake ran straight at him, but instead of trying to fight the Gorelian's strength, used it against him. Jake grabbed Vraktor's outstretched arm and used the bigger alien's own momentum to flip him over his shoulder. Vraktor crashed to the padded floor hard enough to shake the entire arena before Vraktor could get up. Jake was on top of him, using a chokehold he had learned in self-defense class. Vraktor was stronger, but Jake had leverage and position. "Yield," Jake said quietly, tightening his grip just enough to make his point. Vraktor struggled for a few seconds, then went limp. "I yield," he said, his voice barely a whisper. the arena went completely silent. Jake let go and stood up, offering his hand to help Vractor get to his feet. The Gorillian stared at the hand for a moment, then took it. "Good fight," Jake said. Vractor nodded slowly. "Good fight, human." The crowd exploded into noise, some cheering, others arguing. Jake looked up at the viewing area and saw Zixai in the front row. The Calarian's antennae were standing straight up, and his compound eyes were shining with something Jake had never seen before. Hope Jake had won the fight. But he had a feeling the real battle was just beginning. Jake woke up the next morning to find his room's communication device flashing with dozens of messages. He rubbed his eyes and checked the time. It was barely dawn on Harmony Point, but apparently news of his fight with Richter had spread faster than light itself. The first message was from his parents on Earth. His mother's worried face appeared on the screen, and Jake could see his father pacing behind her. "Jake, we just heard about what happened," his mother said. "Are you okay? Are you in trouble? Call us as soon as you get this." The next message was from Admiral Chen Rodriguez, the highest-ranking human in the Galactic Defense Force. Jake had never met the man, but everyone knew who he was. "Mr. Martinez," the Admiral's stern voice said, "your actions yesterday have caused quite a stir.
Now, we need to discuss the implications of what you've done."
Jake deleted message after message without reading them. Some were from news reporters, others from government officials, and a few from people claiming to be his biggest fans. All of them wanted to know why he had fought Vractor and what it meant for human-alien relations. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Jake opened it to find Zixai standing in the hallway holding a small device that looked like a crystal flower. "I brought you something," Zixai said, his musical voice even quieter than usual. "It is a traditional Calarian gift for someone who has shown great courage." Jake accepted the crystal flower, which felt warm in his hands and glowed with a soft blue light. "You didn't have to do this," Jake said. "I just did what anyone would do." Zixai's antennae drooped. "No, Jake Martinez. What you did is not what anyone would do. Many students have watched me being treated badly for months. You are the first to help." They walked to the dining hall together, and Jake immediately noticed how different everything felt. Students who had never spoken to him before were staring and whispering. Some looked impressed, others seemed angry, and a few appeared scared. Nina was waiting at their usual table, but she wasn't alone. 3 other human students sat with her, all looking nervous. "Jake," Nina said as he approached, "we need to talk." "What's wrong?" Jake asked, sitting down across from her. "Commander Brooks called an emergency meeting for all human students," Nina explained. "Some of the alien parents are complaining. They say you started a fight and that humans are becoming too aggressive." Jake felt his stomach drop. "I didn't start anything. I just stopped Vractor from bullying Zixai." "We know that," said Pete Wilson, one of the older human students. "But that's not how some people are seeing it, saying humans are trying to disrupt the natural order of things." "What natural order?" Jake asked. "The one where strong species push around weak ones," Pete said bitterly. "Apparently that's how things have always worked, and we're not supposed to change it." Zixai, who had been quiet during this conversation, suddenly spoke up. "My grandfather is coming to visit," he said. Everyone turned to look at the Calarian. Jake had never heard Zixai mention family before. "Your grandfather?" Nina asked. "Elder Zixai said, his compound eyes reflecting the dining hall lights. "He is very old and very wise. He was a great scientist before the war." Jake spent the rest of the day in classes, but he couldn't concentrate. Every time he looked up, he found someone staring at him. In xenobiology, Professor Corvus, a slug-like gastropod, made several pointed comments about students who cause trouble. In mathematics, Jake noticed that several alien students moved their seats away from him. But something else was happening too. 3 Calarian students who usually sat alone had formed a study group. A shy Aquarian girl actually answered a question in class for the first time all semester, and Jake saw a Centaurian student help a smaller Felinian carry his books, something that would never have happened before. After dinner, Commander Brooks called Jake to her office. The human administrator looked tired, and her usually perfect uniform was wrinkled. "Sit down, Jake," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "We need to have a serious conversation." Jake sat down and waited. Commander Brooks was quiet for a long moment, looking at something on her desk screen. "I've been getting calls all day," she finally said. "From Earth, from alien government officials, from parents, from reporters. Everyone wants to know what I'm going to do about you. Are you going to expel me?" Jake asked. "I probably should," Commander Brooks said. "It would make everyone happy. The Gorillian delegation is furious that one of their children was defeated by a human. Several other species are demanding that I take action to prevent future incidents." Jake felt his heart sink. But Commander Brooks smiled for the first time since Jake had entered her office. "But I've also been getting other kinds of calls. From Calarian officials thanking me for having a student who showed their children kindness. From several progressive alien leaders who think it's about time someone challenged the way things work around here." She turned her desk screen around so Jake could see it. The screen showed a news report from the Calarian homeworld. Hundreds of young Calarians were gathered in a public square, holding signs and chanting something Jake couldn't understand. "Do you know what they're saying?" Commander Brooks asked. Jake shook his head. "They're saying we have worth too. Your fight with Ractor has inspired them. For the first time since the war ended, young Calarians are standing up for themselves." Jake stared at the screen, watching the crowd of insect-like aliens marching peacefully through their city. He had never imagined that his simple decision to help Zix High could lead to something like this. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. "Officially, you broke Academy rules by engaging in unauthorized combat," Commander Brooks said. "Unofficially, you did something that needed to be done. The question is, what do we do now?" Before Jake could answer, there was another knock on the door. Commander Brooks pressed a button, and the door slid open to reveal an elderly Calarian.
Oh.
He was taller than Zix High, with silver-colored skin and antennae that had white tips. His forearms moved gracefully as he walked, and his compound eyes seemed to glow with inner light. "Elder Thixeye," Commander Brooks said, standing up. "Thank you for coming." The old Calarian nodded respectfully, then turned to look at Jake. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "So," Elder Thixeye said finally, his voice like distant music, "you are the human who stood up for my grandson." Jake stood up, not sure what to say. "Yes, sir. I'm Jake Martinez." Elder Thixeye studied him for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He bowed deeply, a gesture that Jake knew was reserved for the highest honors in Calarian culture. "Martinez," the old alien said, "you have given my people something we thought we had lost forever. You have given us hope." Jake felt tears coming to his eyes. He had only wanted to help a friend, but somehow he had done something much bigger than that. "Sir," Jake said, "I just did what felt right." Elder Thixeye smiled, showing teeth that were surprisingly similar to human teeth. "That, young human, is exactly why what you did matters so much." Outside the office windows, Jake could see the stars stretching into infinity. Somewhere out there, young Calarians were marching for their dignity. Somewhere else, other species were watching and wondering if maybe, just maybe, it was time for things to change. Jake realized that his simple act of kindness had started something that was much bigger than him. It's bigger than the Academy, maybe even bigger than the galaxy itself. And he wasn't sure if that was wonderful or terrifying. 3 weeks after the fight, Jake Martinez found himself sitting in the Academy's main conference room, surrounded by more important people than he had ever seen in one place. The room was huge, with a curved ceiling that showed a live view of the stars outside. Representatives from 12 different species sat around a circular table, all of them talking at once in voices that ranged from musical to growling. Jake tried to make himself smaller in his chair. Next to him, Commander Brooks looked calm, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. Across the table, General Thokfar glared at him with small, angry eyes. The massive Gorillian was even bigger than his son Vractor, with gray fur and scars across his face that told stories of old battles. "This human has disrupted the natural order," General Thokfar rumbled, his voice so deep it made the table vibrate. My son was humiliated in front of the entire academy. This cannot stand. A tall, elegant Celestian named Ambassador Liriana floated slightly above her chair, her white robes moving without any wind. Perhaps the general should ask why his son was bullying a smaller student in the first place. She said in a voice like silver bells. Calarians are a defeated species, General Thokvar shot back. They must learn their place. This human has taught them to be rebellious. Jake watched as Elder Thixhai, who sat 3 seats away, slowly stood up. The old Calarian's silver skin seemed to glow under the conference room lights. General Elder Thixa said quietly, My people have been defeated in war, but we have not been defeated in spirit. Jake Martinez simply reminded us of that truth. Your grandson's project won the Innovation Award, added Dr. Helmos, a octopus-like cephalopod who ran the Academy's science department. Perhaps we should be focusing on achievement rather than hierarchy. Jake felt a small surge of pride. Dixai had rebuilt his quantum resonance device with Jake's help, and it had turned out even better than before. The project could revolutionize long-distance communication across the galaxy. The point is not the project, said Counselor Vexstar, a snake-like serpentine with bright yellow scales. The point is that this human has caused unrest across multiple worlds. Young beings everywhere are questioning established social structures. Commander Brooks finally spoke up. With respect, Counselor, maybe those social structures needed to be questioned. The room went quiet. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in the silence. Commander Brooks, General Thokvar said slowly, Are you suggesting that humans know better than species who have been civilized for thousands of years? I'm suggesting that being civilized should mean protecting those who need protection, Commander Brooks replied, not maintaining systems that allow the strong to prey on the weak. Jake wanted to disappear. He had never meant for his simple act of helping a friend to turn into a debate about the future of galactic civilization.
All around the table.
Representatives were arguing in languages he didn't understand. Principal Corvash waved his tentacles for attention. The purple Mindari looked more stressed than Jake had ever seen him. Perhaps we should hear from the student himself, Principal Corvash suggested. Jake Martinez, would you like to explain your actions? Every eye in the room turned to Jake. He felt like a bug under a microscope, examined by creatures who could decide his fate with a single word. His mouth felt dry, and his hands were shaking. Jake started, then stopped. He looked around the table at all the powerful beings staring at him. I saw someone being hurt, and I helped them. That's all. That's all? General Thokvar leaned forward, his massive bulk making his chair creak. You have inspired rebellion across a dozen worlds, and you say that's all? Jake felt anger building in his chest. These adults were making everything complicated when it should have been simple. Yes, that's all, Jake said, his voice getting stronger. Zixai was being bullied. Nobody else would help him, so I did. If that causes problems for your social structures, maybe your social structures are the problem, not me. The room erupted in angry voices. Some representatives seemed furious, others appeared thoughtful, and a few looked impressed. Jake noticed that Vrakter, who had been silent in the corner, was nodding slightly. The human speaks truth, Elder Thixhai said over the noise. For too long we have accepted that might makes right. Perhaps it is time to consider that right makes might. Pretty words, General Thokvar growled. But the galaxy is a dangerous place. The strong protect the weak by leading them. That is how civilization works, is it? Asked Ambassador Liriana. Or is that simply how we have convinced ourselves that oppression is justified? Jake watched as the debate continued around him. He realized that these beings weren't really arguing about him anymore. They were arguing about the kind of galaxy they wanted to live in. A soft chime interrupted the discussion. Principal Corvash looked at his communication device and frowned. We have received an urgent message from the Calarian homeworld, he announced. It seems that young Calarians have organized peaceful demonstrations on 17 different worlds. They are demanding equal treatment in schools and workplaces. General Thokovar's face darkened. See, this is what happens when you encourage rebellion. They are not rebelling, Elder Thixhai said firmly. They are asking for dignity. There is a difference. Jake felt overwhelmed by the weight of what was happening. His simple decision to help Zixai had somehow sparked a movement across multiple worlds. Young beings who had been taught to accept their place were now demanding better treatment. "What happens now?" Jake asked quietly. Commander Brooks put a hand on his shoulder. "Now we decide what kind of academy we want to run and what kind of galaxy we want to live in." Dr. Helmos cleared his throat, getting everyone's attention. "I have a proposal," he said. "Instead of punishing Jake Martinez, why don't we use this situation as a learning opportunity?" "What do you mean?" Principal Corvash asked. "I mean, we establish new policies at the academy," Dr. Helmos explained. "Policies that actively promote cooperation between species instead of just tolerating their differences. We could create mixed species study groups, collaborative projects, and cultural exchange programs." Ambassador Liriana smiled. "An interesting idea. The academy could become a model for the rest of the galaxy, or it could become a breeding ground for more unrest," General Thokovar warned. Elder Thixhai stood up again. "General, with respect, unrest is sometimes necessary for growth. My grandson learned more about courage from Jake Martinez in one day than he learned from years of accepting his place in your hierarchy." Jake looked around the table and realized that something important was happening. These powerful beings were actually considering changing the way things worked, all because he had decided to help a friend. "I have a question," Jake said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. If helping someone who needs help is wrong, then what's the point of having civilization at all? The room went quiet again. This time, the silence felt different. It felt like possibility. General Thokvar stared at Jake for a long moment, then looked at his son. Rukter met his father's eyes and nodded once, very slightly. Perhaps the general said slowly, "It is time to reconsider some things." Jake felt hope growing in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, things were going to change for the better. Outside the conference room windows, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was slowly learning that strength and kindness didn't have to be opposites. 6 months later, Jake Martinez walked through the corridors of Harmony Point Station and smiled at how different everything looked. Where once students had moved in separate groups based on their species, now he saw mixed clusters of friends, working together on projects and sharing meals near the main laboratory. Young Gorillion was patiently helping a Calarian student adjust a delicate instrument. In the library, an Aquarian girl was teaching a group of Centaurians how to solve complex math problems in their underwater calculation method. The hallways buzzed with conversations in dozens of languages, but now the voices sounded friendly. Instead of suspicious, Jake found Zixai in their shared laboratory space, working on his latest project. The Kellerian's confidence had grown tremendously over the past months. His antennae stood tall and proud, and he moved with purpose instead of fear. "How is the communication device coming along?" Jake asked, looking at the beautiful crystal. "A ray Zixa had built." "Very well," Zixa replied, his musical voice filled with excitement. "The quantum entanglement field is stable across 17 star systems now. We could send messages instantly from here to the edge of the galaxy." Jake asked with a grin. Zixai's compound eyes reflected Jake's image dozens of times as he smiled. "Yes, we. This project belongs to both of us. You helped me rebuild my confidence just as much as you helped me rebuild my first device." The laboratory door slid open, and Viroctor entered carrying a heavy box of components. The big Gorillion had changed the most of anyone Jake knew. After their fight, Victor had spent weeks thinking about what Jake had said about strength being used to protect others. Now he was one of the most helpful students in the academy. "Where do you want these power cells?" Fractor asked, setting the box down carefully. "Near the central array, please," Zixai said. "And thank you for carrying them. They are too heavy for me." "No problem," Vractor said. "That's what friends do." Jake still found it amazing to hear Vractor use the word friends when talking about Zixa. The two had become unlikely partners, with Vracta's strength complementing Zixa's intelligence perfectly. Nina Campbell arrived a few minutes later, followed by Kashara and 3 other students from different species. They were all part of the new, integrated study groups that Dr. Helmos had created as part of the Academy's reformed policies. Ready for the presentation? Nina asked Jake. Jake nodded, though he still felt nervous about speaking in front of the entire academy. Today was the day they would demonstrate HFY's communication device to students, faculty, and visiting dignitaries from across the galaxy. They made their way to the main auditorium, where hundreds of beings had gathered. Jake spotted his parents in the front row, having traveled all the way from Earth to see his presentation. Commander Brooks sat with the other faculty members, smiling proudly. Elder HFY was there too, along with representatives from the Galactic Council. Even General Thokvar had come. Though he looked much more relaxed than he had during the hearing 6 months ago, Jake had heard that the general had been working with Calarian leaders to improve conditions on the world's under Gorillian protection. Principal Corvash took the stage, his purple skin glowing with happiness. The Mindery administrator had become one of the strongest supporters of the Academy's new integration policies. 6 months ago, Principal Corvash announced to the crowd, "This Academy faced a crisis that forced us to examine who we are and what we stand for. Today, we celebrate not just a remarkable scientific achievement, but the friendship and cooperation that made it possible." Jake, HFY, and their team took the stage. Jake's hands were shaking slightly, but he felt calmer when he saw all the friendly faces in the audience. "When I first came to this academy," Jake began, "I thought my job was to represent humanity and not cause any trouble. I learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is help someone who needs help, even if it causes trouble." The audience was completely quiet, listening to every word. "This communication device wouldn't exist without friendship," Jake continued. HFY had the brilliant idea, Rector provided the strength to build it, Nina helped with the mathematical calculations, and Kashara contributed her knowledge of crystalline structures. When different species work together, we can accomplish amazing things. HFY stepped forward, his antennae glowing with pride. "Jake Martinez taught me that I don't have to accept being treated badly just because my people lost a war," he showed me that every being has value regardless of their species or their history. Rector moved to the center of the stage, his massive form commanding attention. "I used to think that being strong meant using my power to control others. Jake showed me that real strength means using your power to protect others and help them succeed." They activated the communication device together, each student playing their part. The crystal array began to glow, and suddenly the auditorium was filled with voices from across the galaxy. Students from 17 different worlds were connected instantly, sharing greetings and congratulations in dozens of languages. The audience erupted in applause. Jake saw tears in his mother's eyes and noticed that even General Thokvar was clapping enthusiastically. After the presentation, people crowded around to congratulate them and examine the device. Jake found himself separated from his friends, surrounded by reporters and officials asking questions. Mr. Martinez called a familiar voice. Jake turned to see Elder HFY approaching, moving gracefully through the crowd. "Elder HFY," Jake said, bowing respectfully. The old Calarian smiled. "Wanted to thank you one more time, Jake Martinez. You saved more than just my grandson. You saved my people's hope for the future." "I just helped a friend," Jake said. "Anyone would have done the same thing." Elder HFY's antennae twitched with amusement. "You still believe that, don't you? That what you did was ordinary?" Jake looked around the auditorium, watching students from different species laughing and working together. He saw Rector teaching a young Aquarian how to safely handle heavy equipment. He saw Calarian students confidently presenting their projects to impressed faculty members. He saw a future where species work together instead of competing for dominance. "Maybe it should be ordinary," Jake said finally. "Maybe helping each other should be the normal thing to do." Elder HFY nodded slowly. "Perhaps thanks to you, it will be." Later that evening, Jake stood on the observation deck with HFY, looking out at the stars. Their communication device had made it possible for beings across the galaxy to talk to each other instantly. But Jake thought the real breakthrough had happened months ago in a school hallway. "Do you ever regret it?" HFY asked quietly. "Standing up for me, I mean? Your life became very complicated because of it." Jake thought about the question seriously. His life had become complicated. He received messages from across the galaxy every day, some praising him, others criticizing him. He had become a symbol for change, whether he wanted to be or not. "No," Jake said finally. "I don't regret it. Some things are worth the complications." Zix-Hi's compound eyes reflected the starlight as he smiled.
We're glad. We are friends, Jake.
Martinez. "Me too," Jake said. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars and thinking about the future. The galaxy was changing, slowly but surely. Young beings were learning that they didn't have to accept unfairness just because it was traditional. Species were discovering that cooperation worked better than competition. Jake had learned something important too. He had started out trying not to cause trouble, but he had discovered that sometimes the most important thing you can do is cause the right kind of trouble. As he watched a ship carrying students from the Calarian homeworld dock at the station, Jake smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to help others. He was ready for all of it. The galaxy was becoming a better place, one friendship at a time.